Has it always been your dream to run amazing church meetings? Is it the deep desire of your heart to be a part of engaging, effective, and enjoyable meetings of the congregation? When you were young and your students asked what you wanted to be when you grew up, did you write down, "I want church meetings"? And then, after growing up, years of faithful membership, assisting in all sorts of ways in the church, you finally get on a church board and find the meetings to be dull, frustrating, meandering, not accomplishing much at all in particular, and with many members of the board afterwards expressing frustration at how the meeting went. If you've ever been disappointed at how church meetings have gone, you are not alone. In fact, inefficient, unproductive, unnecessary meetings are one of the major deterrents of volunteers getting involved in a congregation. And unproductive meetings can be a major contributor to volunteer fatigue. And in this video on church leadership, we'll cover the main components that go into a productive, enjoyable, thrilling church meeting. So thank you for joining with us in this video on meetings in the church. Now, whatever the size of the meeting, whether a meeting of the entire congregation, of the elected church board, of committees, there are some components common to all that contribute towards an effective meeting. First of all meetings have a pre-established time and place of the meeting. This may sound rather obvious, but it is important that all eligible members of a meeting are notified in advance of the meeting's occurrence. This may not be a problem for most meetings, as many groups have set times and places at which they meet each month or year. Nonetheless, even in such cases, a friendly reminder can both contribute towards having a necessary number of people at the meeting and help prompt the members to be prepared and mindful of the meeting ahead. Moreover, in the case of special meetings, all members of a group are entitled to be informed when the group is meeting. And for larger meetings, say meetings of the congregation, or for meetings taking up important business, such as proposing amendments to the bylaws, for such meetings, more than one notice may be required. For example, an annual congregational meeting may require 2 notices during church services and a written notice to all members. In such instances, all notice of the time and place, and sometimes the business of the meeting, should be detailed in a church's bylaws. And please consult them to ensure that the meeting being called and conducted is indeed a validly held meeting. Another important component of a valid church meeting is a quorum. A quorum is a minimum number of members of a group to conduct business. Now, in most cases, unless specified otherwise, a majority of the members of the body constitute a quorum. And a majority, generally understood, is more than 50%. However, special meetings, or meetings taking up certain kinds of business, may need a greater quorum, say 2/3 of the group, or a majority of the total membership. In any case, it is necessary to have a quorum present, the minimum necessary number of people to conduct business at the predetermined place and time. Otherwise, the business of the meeting, even if conducted, is not valid, and the body will have to meet again at another time. Another essential component to an effective church meeting is the presence of 2 officers, or individuals fulfilling these official functions. The first, a president; the second, a secretary. Now, a president, chairperson, chair, is there to preside at the meeting. They call the meeting to order. They guide the discussions. They oversee the voting. And at any meeting except the most informal, a presider is necessary to effectively conduct business. And it is necessary for a secretary to be present, someone to record the actions taken at a meeting. This record of events is known as the minutes, and these are necessary to prove the business that was conducted. However, many secretaries put too much work on themselves, and the minutes required are usually a lot less than what are normally submitted by many secretaries. All minutes should record the place, the time, the group, and the officers present, and should also record if minutes from a previous meeting were approved and with correction if necessary. However, the main body of minutes can be relatively brief. Details of reports are not needed, unless actions are taken following from the reports. Similarly, only main motions, as they are finalized by amendments, needs to be incorporated into the minutes. Anything moved, whether approved or voted down, should be included in the minutes. And while the mover should be noted, the seconder doesn't need to be included in a church's minutes. And minutes should record all results of votes, as well as the time of adjournment and the name of the person keeping the minutes. However, that is all that is needed in a church's official minutes, and extended details, the contents of discussion, and the record keeper's opinions really have no necessary place in a church's official minutes. And a final necessary component of an effective church meeting is an agenda, or order of business. A standard order of business exists for meetings of all kinds, and typically includes approval of minutes, reports, unfinished business, and new business. However, a typical church meeting is usually a little more expanded than that, and a formal agenda prepared by the presider, the ministers, the secretary, or a combination, and especially sent around to the membership beforehand, contributes greatly towards an orderly conduct of business at a meeting. All agendas begin with a call to order. At churches, they usually follow with a word of prayer that God may bless the proceedings of the meeting. Then follows the approval of the prepared agenda and any additions as necessary. Then approval of the previous meeting's minutes. And it should be noted that the previous meeting's minutes do not become the official minutes until they are approved at this subsequent meeting. Any additions or changes should be made in the original minutes, and not in the minutes of the meeting at which they were approved. Then generally follows officer reports. Reports from the minister, the president, the treasurer, the secretary, and so forth. These reports may contain suggestions for actions by the group, and any motions or discussions proceeding from a report should be conducted at the conclusion of the report. Then will typically follow committee reports, given by a liaison or representative from the committees. And finally, a church meeting then gets to its business. What comes first is unfinished business. This is technically business that was interrupted or not gotten to at the previous meeting of the group. Then we'll take up any business deferred for further consideration or committed to a committee from a previous meeting. Now, it is a common practice in many churches to call this old business, and to take up here any business that was not entirely concluded from a previous meeting. However, designating this as unfinished business and taking up there only business that was deliberately postponed to the present meeting is a great way to keep a group's attention to the business at hand and to prompt clear final decisions of the body at every meeting, rather than taking up these same items of business repeatedly without any clear conclusion. And finally, at long last, follows the new business, the business appointed for consideration at that meeting. While any business germane to a body's responsibilities can be brought up at a meeting, it usually helps for the efficiency and enjoyment of the meeting if business is considered thoroughly beforehand. Having the relevant facts at hand, the church's calendar, the people affected by a decision, knowing with some proximity what a proposal might cost. Gathering this information beforehand may save the meeting a lot of time and can help to keep the group's focus on the business at hand. The aforementioned components are necessary for all effective and valid meetings of a church. Whether a meeting of a committee, a board, or of the entire congregation, each of these aspects are present. However, a few additional considerations can really help you knock your meeting out of the park. Firstly, it's good to recognize that there are varying levels of formality within a congregation. At a small meeting of a team or a group of 4 to 5 people, usually not much formal structure is necessary. Likewise, at a large congregational meeting where hundreds of people may be present, a more formal approach might be prudent. And being sensitive to the customs and the style of the congregation can help you strike a good balance between formality and comfort of a group's meeting. In some cases, a strict adherence to parliamentary procedure is actually very helpful. And in others, many meeting formalities would be cumbersome and frankly unnecessary. And so one can be sensitive to the level of formality appropriate for a meeting and adjust that level as required. Secondly, a minister's role may likewise vary widely across different meetings of a congregation. Churches may have very different practices and expectations of a minister's level of involvement. In some churches, a minister may be the central leader of conducting the business of a congregation. And in others, the church leadership may take up the lion's share of the responsibility, with a minister playing a largely advisory role. And even within a congregation on different committees, a minister may have varying levels of involvement. And so appropriately modulating one's level of activity may help a congregation, board, or committee operate at its best. And finally, and most importantly, it is essential that meetings are prepared, efficient, and well-led. Many people have been to church meetings that seem to digress forever, where people do not seem ready to propose and effectively discuss items of business, where meetings seem to become more of a social function than a business gathering, and where the presider of a meeting doesn't seem to have good understanding or control of the proceeds of the meeting. And so for the effective accomplishment of the business of a church meeting, and for the continued enjoyment and participation of a group's members, it is necessary that its participants be thoroughly prepared for the business beforehand, to keep themselves to the task at hand, and to be led by someone who knows both the basics of parliamentary procedure and the business of the congregation at large. All works together to accomplish a church's business in an efficient and enjoyable manner. And including these necessary components and following these suggestions will make your wildest dreams about church meetings come true. And so thank you for joining in this video on church meetings, and may God bless you today.